Hey, welcome in. Stinkin Truth Podcast. Mark Schlereth here in New York. Mike Evans back in Denver, Colorado. Mike, how are you, my friend?
I am great. So we got a lot to get to, so I don't want to waste any time if that's okay with you. Time to panic in Dallas? Is it time to panic in Dallas?
Yeah, because I'm going to do something that you just don't do in NFL parlance, okay? It's the dirtiest, filthiest word there is in the National Football League. And I'm going to spell it out quietly in case somebody's listening. S-O-F-T. Soft. I actually went F-T. So it's like soft. They're soft, man. I mean, You punch the Dallas Cowboys in the mouth and that's what they do. I mean, like, you look at their losses. Like, if you come in there and you're a bad team, they'll beat you up. But if you come in there and absolutely thunder punch them in the face, like the New Orleans Saints did, like the Baltimore Ravens did, man, they roll over. And then Dak Prescott, after the game last week against Baltimore, comes out and says, essentially, we got dudes on this team that aren't professional. They're not lining up in the right place. They're not doing their job. And I think to myself, wow, that's some damning information, right? You're the Dallas Cowboys. It's damning information. But at the same time, Mike, I say, well, what's going to change? Because if you don't empower your coach to do anything about it, what's the consequence of guys lining up and not being professional? And even like the things that come out of Dallas just are mind-boggling to me. So Jerry Jones comes out after the game and talks about Derrick Henry and says, well, we didn't have the money to sign him.
Right.
You did what? What? Like, one, you know what you did? You let your quarterback go unsigned until 2 hours before the first game. You didn't sign your wide receiver that you know is a star from day one. You waited until it drug out into camp. Like, you probably could have got those things done less. And in today's world where we don't really pay running backs, you could have signed Derrick Henry. You chose not to sign Derrick Henry. You signed Ezekiel Elliott instead. Dalvin Cook you brought in. Like, give me a break, dude. Stop with the false and fake narratives. You decided not to do anything, and now you're getting kicked right in the teeth because of it. Like, the Dallas Cowboys are a mess, and I don't see anything changing anytime soon. It's not like brand new personnel's walking into the door and saying, here we are, we're your run stoppers, let's go. Like, that's not going to happen. So what's going to change, Mike? Nothing.
Fire the coach?
I mean,
paging Bill Belichick. Paging Bill Belichick.
Do you think honestly, let me ask you a question in all seriousness. Do you think Bill Belichick is going to go to the Dallas Cowboys where he knows his mentor, Bill Parcells, wasn't given the authority to make real decisions? So do you think Bill Belichick's going to go, yeah, let me go work for Jerry where I know I'm never really going to be given the full authority to coach my team, where I know my owner will circumvent me at every, at every corner, where I know my owner is going to be on the radio giving away trade secrets about my football team twice a week. And, oh, by the way, he's doing post-game press conferences after every game. Like, you think that Bill Belichick is signing up for that? I think not, unless you're just signing up for a paycheck. But my feeling about Bill Belichick is Bill Belichick likes to win. So I don't think he's going to sign up for that.
Well, when you put it that way, I guess you're right. Bill Belichick probably isn't going to come riding to the rescue for the Dallas Cowboys this year. Speaking of coming to the rescue, is the source of hope for San Francisco 49er fans some doctor in Germany that Christian McCaffrey is visiting regarding that troublesome Achilles?
Yeah, how about that? I mean, that never looks good when you travel to Germany to have your Achilles looked at, right? I mean, I don't know what those Germans are doing. Maybe I need to go to Germany.
Well, you're German. You're German.
I am. Road trip.
Back to the motherland.
Go back to the motherland and find out what those Germans are cooking over there. I think it's bratwursts. There's boiling up some bratwursts, right? That never sounds good. And listen, man, they're running the ball well, and you can sit there and say, well, they've got all these injuries. ultimately, Mike, they were giving up about 15 points a game under Steve Wilkes. They fired him last year. They hired a new defensive coordinator. And when I look at them giving up a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter to the Rams, who are they're more beat up than they are. You got in San Francisco, you got superstars at every level. You got Nick Bosa, Hargrave, although Hargrave went out at the end of the game with an injury. But Fred Warner at the linebacker position, Jarvarius Ward at the defensive back position. Like, you've got superstars at every level of your defense, and your defense is like they're giving it up. They're not getting it done, and they got like Tutu Atwell. Mm-hmm. Like it's not Cooper Kupp, and it's not Puka Nacua. It's Tutu Atwell. Like, all I know is 2 + 2 is 4. That's all I know about the guy, right? For Atwell. Like, he is the guy that's beating your ass right now. And their running back has, 3 touchdowns, and what a mess. What a mess. And it's not, offensively they were fine, except they were dropping balls right and left like it was their job. And oh, by the way, there was one guy I remember on this podcast that was getting a lot of heat from 49er fans and a lot of heat from, wide receiver fans and, the overrated wide receivers. When one guy on this podcast said on multiple occasions, maybe you should remind me of what I said on multiple occasions about a certain wide receiver.
Brandon Ayuk?
Yeah. What did I say about him? I can't remember.
You said that defensive coordinators are not losing sleep at night thinking about Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, and how's he been since every other receiver has been out and injured, right? It's your time to shine. You held in. You didn't sign your contract. Then after you signed it, you said, yeah, we probably could have got this done months ago because nothing really changed. But you were holding out for whatever. And then now you've got the opportunity, right? Deebo Samuel's out. You got injuries to McCaffrey. George Kittle doesn't play. Let's go, man. Let me lead my team. And you basically took a shit in your helmet. So, maybe one guy, maybe we should start listening to one guy who's got a vandal event. Idaho. By the way, Idaho is kicking that ass right now. They're 3-1.
Folks, listen, I got to remind you about Mark Schlereth in case you didn't already know. He may be a big, burly, strong man, but inside beats the heart of a little insecure child. And he needs to remind all of us about those insecurities from time to time.
Well, but if I don't remind you, you guys aren't going to jump on the hanger today and say, oh, we were wrong, right? You just move on. You don't come back at me and go, oh, Stink, please forgive us. We were wrong. You were right. So I have to remind you people that you were wrong and I was right. And I'm a really gracious loser, but I'm a dick when it comes to winning.
Well, get ready, because I'm about ready to throw praise your way, because you were right about this from the start, and you're looking even more right about Sam Darnold. Because you said early on, if you're a team looking for a quarterback, a veteran quarterback to be able to plug and play right away, that Sam Darnold coming off that year of rehab in San Francisco was the way to go. He is balling out in Minnesota. He's a MVP candidate. And I wonder, Mark, if you're Minnesota right now, are you looking at Sam Darnold differently than you did at the start of this whole thing in terms of what to do with J.J. McCarthy moving forward? Do you put J.J. McCarthy in the Aaron Rodgers Green Bay Witness Protection Program for a couple years?
Yeah, absolutely. There's no rush, right? Take your time. Hey, listen, man, we're all about you. Take your time. Don't hurry back. And then, you look at Sam Darnold, he's on a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
So at what point, if you're in Minnesota, do you go back to him and say, hey, man, you're our guy? What point does he become Baker Mayfield? Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting. And just the Sam Darnold history really quick so people know it. Like, he gets drafted to the Jets, which is never usually good for anybody, right? You get drafted by the Jets, it's where, your career goes to die off of college, that in Jacksonville. So you get drafted by the Jets. He got put in, and Jerry Bates was their OC, guy, the guy they were running the offense through. And he was putting in, and this comes, straight from my time in San Francisco, the last 2 games calling a game. And Kyle Shanahan's like, hey, man, he goes into this Peyton Manning offense. And there's one guy in the history of the National Football League that can run the Peyton Manning offense. And I don't know if you've heard of him, but his name is Peyton Manning. And like nobody else can run that offense. And so instantly you go into the Jets, and here you are coming out of USC, a year earlier or whatever, and you're thrust into this offense that's like, come on, really? And so that's the offense that you play in. Then they boot you out of there, and you go to Matt Rule's collegiate style of offense. And until Matt Rule gets fired, and your last 7-8 games in Carolina when Steve Wilkes takes over and Ben McAdoo takes over the play calling, was really the first time that he was exposed to kind of an NFL progression offense. And then he goes to San Francisco, and he has opportunities to go elsewhere where he might be able to compete for a starting job. And he says, no, I want to come to San Francisco. I want to learn how to play NFL offense. NFL. And so Kyle Shanahan goes, listen, you're not going to compete for the starting quarterback job, but you can compete with Trey Lance for the backup. And he goes, I'll take it, and I'll take less money to come here because I believe that it's going to benefit my career in the long run, and I'm going to learn actually how to play the quarterback position, which I never learned with the Jets or Carolina. Bam! Now we fast forward to where he is now in an offense that basically is, in Kevin O'Connell, a guy that's off the Shanahan tree, right? Because he worked for McVay forever. McVay worked for Kyle Shanahan in that Washington Redskin offense at the time. And so here we are, full circle. You're going from one offense with a very, the same structure, the same, the same verbiage, the same language, the same everything. And you're rolling right into Minnesota where you have weapons and you have a good team and good coaching. And Sam Darnold is, without question, Sam Darnold is in that MVP. I mean, it's only week 3, so it's too early. But he is playing exceptional football right now for the Minnesota Vikings.
So you think this is sustainable for Darnold and Minnesota? You don't think that this is some sort of flukish, hey, Jeremy Lin Sanity type heater that he's on that will eventually, fade from our memories?
No, I think Sam Darnold, one, he's got great arm talent, but he understands the offense. Like he went through a year of rehab. Now he's getting the same type of offense with a really good coordinator / play caller in Kevin O'Connell. And, oh, by the way, you're coupling that with a guy, there's several defensive guys that are going to get other opportunities to be head coaches. And Brian Flores in Minnesota is going to be one of those guys. Like what he's doing on the defensive side of the ball, the way they are orchestrating on defense, the way they are tying people up in knots. I mean, tying up San Francisco, beating them down. Then last week it was Houston, just tying them up. He's going to get another shot at being a head coach in this league as well, and deservedly so, man. He has orchestrated a defense the last 2 years that's been pretty incredible. And now that you have an offense that's complementing that defense, good things going on in Minnesota right now. It's a great story.
You say that the Jets traditionally, for college quarterbacks, a place where careers go to die, and you mentioned Jacksonville. I guess maybe Cincinnati as well, because we saw 2 former number 1 overall picks go out on Monday night and both dropped to 0-3 in Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow. And it's here that I have to give out the obligatory stat. Only 2.5% of teams that start a season 0-3 make it to the playoffs. It is a Herculean effort to try to dig out of this hole. Which quarterback would you bet on sort of turning his season and I guess turning his career around?
Well, I mean, listen, Joe Burrow has proven that he can do it, that he can play at a very high level. He played at a very high level on Monday night. Unfortunately, you look at 0-3 start for the Cincinnati Bengals, and you mentioned 2.4% chance of going to the playoffs. I mean, their season stick a fork in them. And, one of the issues, and I did this on Breakfast Ball on FS1. You can watch me there every morning, 8 to 10 Eastern. But I did this on Breakfast Ball, and everybody just booed me off the stage, essentially, because they don't understand football at a high enough level. I've been trying to educate you for 8 years, and it's still kind of touch and go. But, I look at the way they operate. And, of course, Cincinnati scored, every time they had the ball, right? So they're they scored 30 points. There's nothing wrong with their offense. I go, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying as a head coach you have to be aware of everybody's issues. It's not just about scoring. You have to be aware of everybody's issues. And what do we have to do to win this football game? And I know that people will say, well, scoring points is what it's going to take to win this football game. And I get that. But this is like, I'm trying to have a really nuanced conversation. When you know 3 of your starting defensive linemen are down, and you know your backups aren't as what we like to call good as your starters, guess what? You know you've got an issue, right? There's an issue there. So it's not just about scoring. It's about possessing the ball. It's about dominating time of possession and not giving your opponent an opportunity in your house to actually put offense together. And I look at the situation, and nothing changed for that offense. They're a shotgun offense that they're 4th in the league as far as number of attempts thrown per game. 4th in the league. They're going to throw it at almost 66% of the time out of gun. And then I looked at teams that throw it the most. The teams with the highest percentage of throws this season so far. And it's the most throws. So the top 10 throwing teams percentage-wise. The first team you get to with a winning record is at 10.
Oof.
So there's a complementary nature to football. What do we have to do to win this game? And I get that it's almost counterintuitive to go, well, if we score every time, we win the game. Well, you don't, obviously, because the other team scored 38.
Right.
So you're going to have to do something. And I put it on Zach Taylor. Dude, your inability to actually alter your offense and to go, how are we going to keep our defense off the field? Because that ultimately is the most important thing you can do at this stage. You got 3 starting defensive linemen there, dead. You know, I mean, they're not dead, but they're gone. You know what I'm saying?
Football dead.
Right. Like you understand what I'm trying to say, right? Maybe I don't articulate it well.
No. I get it. But I think so. What you're saying is that whatever issue Cincinnati may have, at least you don't have to feel like in Joe Burrow, you're looking at a bust.
No, Joe Burrow is fine. What I'm saying is you guys are done. Your season's over. It's kaput. You're 0-3. You ain't coming back from
that, especially in that division.
Right.
In that division, that conference, yeah.
Right. It's like being ugly. You ain't getting back from that. Like you dull yourself up and everything, but you just got to face the fact that you're not handsome. And so that's going to be something, not you, Mike. I mean, you're incredibly handsome. But anyhow.
That's twice. Twice he's been a dick.
You're not
twice you've been a dick. Twice you've been a dick.
You're not overcoming that. But I think when it comes to coaching, I think one of the things you have to understand, and I think the great coaches get this, you have to understand what our issues are and how we mitigate those issues so they don't cost us games. You knew going into that game on Monday night that you had a defensive issue. And you know what you did? Nothing to mitigate it. Not one thing.
Just kind of, we got about 5-6 minutes here. I kind of want to go rapid fire because there's so many storylines coming out of this weekend in the NFL. So if you're Jacksonville and Trevor, what the heck has happened to Trevor Lawrence? And what do? I guess you just have to fire Doug Peterson and try again. You got $200 million already invested in Trevor Lawrence. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again here.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the natural solution is for the NFL not to put him on TV anymore. Because if he's not on TV anymore, I mean, it's Jacksonville. We'll never talk about it again, right? So nobody really cares if they're bad as long as nobody sees it. So, we'll just not put them on TV anymore, and it'll kind of just take care of it like Office Space. If we just move him out of the building, or we just quit sending him checks, he'll eventually quit showing up, and then nobody will see it. Nobody will talk about it. It's a problem. It's a problem. And you've invested all that money, and he is not playing very well. He's regressed. He has lost 8 straight games as a starting quarterback for Jacksonville. So what does it mean? You're not going to get rid of him, the player. You already invested all the money, like $275 million in him or whatever it was. So ultimately, you're right. And I love Doug Peterson. He's a great dude. And I think he's a good coach. Doug Peterson getting fired. Will it be today? Will it be tomorrow? I don't know. But it's going to be sooner than later, I would imagine. It's because you got to do something to spark their football team. You got to do something to figure out their quarterback, because they cannot have him continue to play the way he plays, making all that money, and you keep losing.
I don't want to mention that Cincinnati game without mentioning the quarterback on the other side of the equation, Jaden Daniels. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about your welcome to the NFL breakout performance. That was exceptional.
Yeah. I think there's this, I think one, Dan Quinn taking over that program and understanding, like, we've got some issues in this rebuilding program, but there's some non-negotiables for us. We're going to play for one another. We're going to play hard, but probably most importantly, we're going to play physical. And then you get Cliff Kingsbury, who operated that air raid offense forever, right? And you say, hey, Cliff, we want some air raid principles for their quarterback, Jaden Daniels, who runs the ball and does all those things well. But we also need you to have the understanding that we've got to be a physical football team. We've got to run the ball. So we're going to bring in Anthony Lynn to assist you, former head coach, with the Chargers, the Bills. I think it was either with the Bills too as a head coach, play caller, but really understands the run game. And so you morph those two things together. They're a physical football team. They ran the snot out of the ball. And then Jaden Daniels, as you mentioned, man, found Terry McLaurin, who's not a good receiver, but a great receiver, great route runner, made some big plays over the top. It was exceptional. And it's not lost on me that the first touchdown pass that a budding star made in his, in his first ever, the first ever time he threw a touchdown pass that this budding star made was to a fat offensive lineman. Like, you want to, get it to the skill guys.
Yes.
For the first time in my life, I agree with you. Get it to the skill guys, the offensive tackles. It was a thing of beauty. I'm all over it. A kid is, I met with him last week. Kid is bright. He's smart. He loves it. He's, a key card. Dan Quinn called him a key card guy. First guy in the building, last guy out. I mean, he's all about football. What
lesson do we learn from Carolina, Andy Dalton, Bryce Young? What's the lesson? What's the lesson we take from this?
Well, the lesson is it was your fault, Bryce. That's like breaking up with a girl and saying, hey, it's not me, it's you. It's you. You're the problem. Andy Dalton came in, was a professional quarterback. And, now maybe you can argue that the Raiders, made a bunch of business decisions like their coach said, and maybe they didn't play very professionally. But Andy Dalton's a professional football player, and it showed. And Bryce Young, I'm not saying that he's not trying hard, and I'm not saying that he's not, trying to prepare. But dude, that dude ain't a professional quarterback as of yet. Maybe he will be someday. Maybe he will be. But at this point, he's not. And everybody talking about, it's just the Carolina Panthers, and they've got their issues, to be sure, no question about it. They've got their issues. But Bryce Young is a guy that was not ready for prime time and has not been ready for prime time. And I think Andy Dalton coming out there and throwing 3 touchdowns, and first quarterback this year to throw 3 touchdowns and 300 yards passing. It was you, Bryce.
Finally, this might actually be the segment of the podcast that gets the most attention out there, because one thing's becoming painfully clear every single week the Chiefs play. It's 11 versus 12. You have to understand that when you play the Kansas City Chiefs, it's 11 versus 12, and that the Chiefs have now become the Los Angeles Lakers of the NFL. Yeah. You just know you're not going to get a friendly whistle, and it was on display again on Monday night with a bogus non-pass interference call.
You'll get a friendly whistle when the game isn't on the line. But when the game is on the line, that whistle is 100% of the time going to one team and one team only. The Kansas City Chiefs. Now, with that said, and the Kansas City Chiefs fans are a bunch of whiny bitches. So I just want to let you guys know that because you mentioned this and they get their panties
I know.
in a wad. But what I will say is, and I'm going to give the Chiefs a lot of love here, there is not a better team in the National Football League making critical plays in critical moments. Listen, man, the pass interference notwithstanding, they had a 4th and 1. The Atlanta Falcons did 4th and 1 down in the red zone, and they went to convert it. And I think it was Bolton that just shot through a gap, bam, tackles it in the backfield, boom, ball's going the other way. Like, it's not just Patrick Mahomes. It's everybody making a critical play when their number's called in the most critical moments. Kansas City Chiefs just have a belief that, we're going to get that done. And they just go out and do it. And, I'll give them – and that has nothing to do with the officiating. That has to do with being well coached and having a ton of confidence. And they have all of that.
All right. Good week. Great storylines. A lot of stuff happening.
A lot of stuff happening. And you know what? You can stay tuned right here on the Stinkin Truth podcast because we're also going to dump another podcast, The Game I Called, which was a sneaky good game. I thought for sure I was going to get removed. Detroit at Arizona. Detroit really flexed their muscles. We'll talk about that in the Leftovers podcast, so you can tune in for that a little bit later on in the week. But for Mike, I am Mark. Thank you so much for being a part of it. We appreciate you guys, and we'll be back with you later on in the week on the Stinkin Truth podcast.